Hello and welcome to the webinar. This is Paul Berman with ECODIT, the implementing partner for CEFF-CCA, the Clean Energy Financing Facility for the Caribbean and Central America. I'm here to give a quick welcome on behalf of ECODIT. This is the second of 3 webinars. The first one took place on behalf of CEFF-CCA last month, which was the Market Makers webinar, and another follow-up webinar will be coming up in September, highlighting some of the innovators for our grantees program. We have a very exciting set of speakers representing the CEFF-CCA grantees from across Central America and the Caribbean region. Jorge Will, who is the chief of party, will be introducing the speakers shortly. But these grantees are doing amazing things to bring modern and affordable energy services to some of the hardest to reach communities throughout the Latin American and Caribbean region. Before I hand it off to Christine Pendzich from USAID, I'd like to do a formal welcome from ECODIT, which is a small business implementing partner with more than 25 years experience as a trusted USAID partner. We implement projects in the energy, environment, and natural resources sectors and implement programs globally. Currently, we have 3 projects in our energy portfolio, which are major USAID investments. Obviously, CEFF-CCA is one of them. We're also implementing energy reform programs in the DRC, as well as large-scale transmission and distribution projects in Central Asia. But I'd like to say for the record that CEFF-CCA is far and away our favorite. We do have many speakers, so I'd like to hand it off to Christine from USAID right now, so she can do a quick introduction on behalf of USAID.
Thanks, Paul. This is Christine Pendzich from the Latin America and Caribbean Bureau of USAID, and I just wanted to take a minute on behalf of the U.S. Agency for International Development to welcome you all to this webinar on the Clean Energy Finance Facility for Central America and the Caribbean. This project was set up as a joint effort of the U.S. State Department, USAID, OPIC, and USTDA just about 3 years ago, and its goal is to support development of modern energy sources in the target regions of the Caribbean and Central America as a means to support energy independence, lower energy costs, and in the medium run term to contribute to economic growth and job creation. We are very pleased and proud to have been able to make early stage grants to the projects whose leaders will be presenting in just a moment. And I hope you're as excited as we are to hear about their work so far and their plans for development. Thanks very much. Welcome again. And I'm handing it over to Jorge, the chief of party.
Hi, my name is Jorge Barrig, and I'm the Chief of Party for the Clean Energy Finance Facility for the Caribbean and Central America. I want to add my welcome to the ones you've already heard from Paul and from Christine. I want to highlight the role, the leadership role that USAID has taken in establishing, in addition to the other agencies mentioned by Christine, in establishing this facility. It is one of those facilities that, in my view, having been in the energy space for over 20 years, is replicable and makes a difference. I want to, at the same time, introduce CEFF-CCA to you. Before I do that, I want to make sure that I frame this webinar. The first webinar was held in June, and it was focused on what we call the change makers or the innovators. At that stage, we highlighted several of the grantees who, with projects that were new, that were introducing either a new technology or a new modality or a new business approach to the ongoing problems of energy access, energy security, and the energy transition that we all seek, especially in the Caribbean region. This second webinar is the one focused on what we call market makers. The market makers are the scaffolding that make that allow for the idea projects to then find a space. So this could be financing. We have 2 funds that will be joining us today of a slightly different nature, 3 funds in fact. And we also have a university that is becoming a regional center of excellence for renewable energy and energy efficiency in Central America. And the value of highlighting the role of what we call the market makers is that ideas tend to go nowhere, tend to go through a cycle that might in many cases end up in what's called the valley of death of the project cycle. But initiatives like CEFF-CCA provide the type of financing that allow for some of these projects to then proceed to the financing stage or the execution and implementation stage. It is the third webinar will be in September, and that is more focused on the entrepreneurs, on the types of businesses that have been supported and generated here. But I will introduce CEFF-CCA at this particular moment. So CEFF-CCA is a clean energy finance facility. We've heard from Christine, who was established by USAID, OPIC, USCDA, and the Department of State. It provides targeted development to strengthen clean energy projects and initiatives. It is worthy of highlighting that it's not your traditional type of project. Up and down the value stream, as you will be hearing, especially today, our support, the CEFF-CCA support, has made a difference in a variety of initiatives. The program concludes in 2018. In October of 2018, it provided $10 million in grant funding for early stage renewable energy and energy efficiency projects. And it focused on a broader perspective of what a project would require, whether it's commercial studies or market studies or technical studies, whatever is in its way to achieve financial close, or one of the gaps to be addressed. ECODIT, as highlighted by Paul, is the implementer under contract to USAID, and I believe Paul did a very good job introducing ECODIT. The types of projects and initiatives: renewable energy projects and energy efficiency projects, the traditional power generation projects, but also looking at market-based solutions, as well as initiatives and studies that seek to catalyze clean energy markets, seek to lay the foundation for the transition that we seek, that we believe is cost efficient and cost effective in the Caribbean and Central America. Market strengthening and enabling studies, technical and commercial solutions, or addressing specific obstacles and barriers to entry in different countries or in different regions within countries. The applicants could be and have been in the private sector and project developers, as well as project owners, NGOs and civil society, universities, and public-private partnerships. The listing of the countries from which the initiatives came from or were accepted is listed in this slide as well. All Central America and most of the Caribbean. Our selection criteria was noteworthy because it went well beyond the traditional approach of what makes a project a successful project, what makes a venture a successful venture. It's a more integral and integrated approach. So we begin with social and environmental as well as economic benefits. Sustainability defined in a broader sense. It required positive impacts to energy access, energy security, poverty alleviation, gender inclusion. You will see these themes being highlighted in different ways throughout the various presentations from our speakers today. The projects needed to leverage as well at least $20 for every $1 spent by the CEFF-CCA grants program. It also required financial additionality, meaning we needed to fill a funding gap, development costs, or accelerate the development process, attracting private sector participants and addressing a barrier to securing finance or insurance or some other type of barrier. We received 92 applications. You will see the statistics of how the program was managed, how many from Central America, how many from the Caribbean. 82% were in the renewable energy space, 5% in energy efficiency, and then 13%, which was a really interesting core group, was the enabling the energy transition. We're celebrating some of those during this webinar today. 23 grants were awarded. You can see a listing of some of those highlighted projects. Some of them have begun operations. Others have begun construction, civil works. In every single stage, we can, by a variety of metrics, we've been able to see advances in all the projects that were financed and initiatives that were financed by the CEFF-CCA program. The estimated impacts to date are, we'll see the potential amount of investment leverage, over $809 million, 524 megawatts of additional installed capacity. The beneficiaries, 2.7 million people in the region, and then 815,000 tons of CO2 reduced, CO2 equivalent reduced in a year, per year. For the market makers, we're going to have the following order and the following presenters. Number one, we will start with Patrick Doyle from MGM Innova, who's an energy efficiency and renewable energy investment fund focused on, well, they have a variety of funds, and some of them are global funds. In this particular case, this fund that we work with is focused in Central America and the Caribbean. The second presenter will be ULSA, which is Universidad La Salle from Nicaragua, who did some market, customer demand, and technical studies and surveys focused on their clean energy systems as a solution to address unreached, or areas that are not at, that don't yet have access to electric power in Nicaragua. An important series of studies. Bunka will be the third, and it's market. They were seeking market, application, and financial strategies for the integration of renewable energies and energy efficiency within rural and small and medium enterprises productive sector in Central America. That's noteworthy because it wasn't entirely about the technology itself or the renewable energy, but how to better integrate it into the productive sector. And then HREM with a fund as well, and impact investors focused on technology, energy efficiency, and renewable energy in Central America and the Caribbean. I think, right. And so I'd like to introduce Patrick Doyle from MGM Innova, who will take it from here. Patrick?
Thank you, Jorge. Thank you for the introduction. I'll go ahead and present about 10 slides and then look forward to the discussion. So MGM Innova as a private equity fund, it's focused on Latin America, and the particular fund that we have fully invested currently is focused in anywhere from Colombia up to Mexico, and including all of Central America and the Caribbean. So we identified an opportunity to partner with ECODIT and USAID to help us develop the pipeline and put this capital to work. It's a rather unique fund in that it was closed with approximately $75 million, and it was focused on energy efficiency, including distributed generation. Smaller portion of the total funds of dollars. So it's about 60% energy efficiency, including distributed generation, 40% renewables. These are some of the projects that we've developed. It's been a challenge, I would say, to find the projects, the smaller energy efficiency projects, and put equity to work. But the USAID partnership was, and funds like it were key to really helping us develop the pipeline and be able to make these investments. I would say there is a huge gap in financing for projects in the smaller than $500,000. It's very difficult, but in the $500,000 to $5 million, $10 million range, as many of you know, there is really a lack of adequate capital out there. So there are a few funds, and the fund that Fernando is going to talk about later in our fund are focused on addressing this, but there's also a huge lack of debt. So I'll talk about a little bit about how USAID's funds also can help overcome the barriers to accessing debt financing. Our financing to date has been 100% equity into the projects that I'll talk about. When you're looking at these, this is a little bit technical, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, but the types of contracts that you sign for these smaller projects are very complex, and they depend on each country and the regulatory framework. Generally, we're signing lease agreements for the equipment, and those leasing agreements can be operating or financial leases in different countries. It can be structured as where the revenues are coming directly into a trust, into a municipal lighting payment, for example, or they can be traditional PPA types of agreements. But even in those, a straight kilowatt hour PPA, take or pay, as you see in larger utility scale plants, is not that common, because you always have to be matching the demand of the customer. You can't be providing excess to the grid in many cases. And if you're considering hot water, it's different types of calculations from a standard kilowatt hour PPA. The types of investments we do as a fund, it's all equity that we're investing, although we may invest that in a subordinated debt structure or preferred equity structure, so it's a little more debt-like. But we are seeking high teens returns, despite the fact that our investors, about half of our capital comes from international development banks. It's looked at as private financing from the development banks, and therefore needs to target equity returns. On focusing on energy efficiency projects, there is a huge challenge, because the smaller the project, the higher the proportional development costs are. So the engineering that it takes to get to a point where you know the costs and you know the savings, and you can sign a legally binding agreement with a client is significant, and that's one of the biggest barriers to energy efficiency in the world. The USAID grant funds and funds like that help you to overcome that by absorbing some of those initial costs. But you see even manufacturers of air conditioning equipment and lighting often going in, providing very high level proposals, trying to get the clients to commit to buying based on a price. And it's a very difficult presentation for them to make, because they don't actually know the savings for their customers. So the funds that can absorb some of those initial costs and allow you to present real costs and benefits to customers are pretty critical in energy efficiency to this point. We talk about the phases we go through. Once we do have a binding commitment, although it's not completely binding, because if anything changes, a customer can still back out of the agreement. But once we are at that point, then we are able to access funds from our own funds and put those towards the cost of developing the final engineering design and paying to develop the legal contract with the client. There's a lot of talk in energy efficiency and distributed generation about standard contracts, and it does happen, for instance, in the US at the residential level on distributed generation, but it is very difficult to use a standard contract even within a country. Across countries, contracts are always going to vary due to local legal distinctions, but even within a country, each client has particular concerns or needs, and each client has their own lawyers and wants to review their own agreements. So it is very difficult to have a standard contract, and that poses challenges for debt providers as well as for the eventual aggregation and securitization of these types of projects. We tend to transfer the installations to the customers at the end, but there are other contracts where at the end of the period, say 15 years on a solar project, you don't actually turn over the equipment. You plan on signing another lease with the client or another PPA with the client for a lower amount. These are some of the sample projects that we've done with the help of the USAID and CEFF-CCA program. We have about 600 kilowatts now operating on a hospital in a rural part of Panama. That's a successful story, and we have a video online that I'm happy to share if anyone is interested in seeing a few more details. BAC is a large bank in El Salvador where we've done smaller solar distributed generation and upgraded chillers and air conditioning systems, and that's another project that the returns actually are much lower than we expected because the costs ended up being higher than we promised, and as well as electricity prices went down in El Salvador. So there's lots of factors that can make these projects higher risk than it would appear. And then I highlight Red Frog Beach which is off grid in Panama, and that's a project where we're trying to integrate solar operating there, and we use the USAID funds to look at the trends in origin and see whether they're completely off of the diesel generation. And then there's an example here. This project was not directly funded by USAID for the construction, this 5 megawatt project at a rural cooperative in Costa Rica, but with USAID funds, we've looked at 2 different studies for municipal lighting in the region, as well as an electric vehicle study that the local cooperative would like to roll out. I just want to mention as well the cost of debt. I mentioned up front that getting financing for these projects is challenging, and there are a few equity funds that can do 100% equity and take all the construction risk. But then even at that point, getting lenders, even development banks or OPIC type of financing into these projects is a challenge, and really hasn't been done to date. We have used a small amount of the USAID grant funds to help pay for the legal costs and structuring costs to figure out the best way to aggregate projects across countries that are already financed and for the most part operating, and get the debt necessary to make the equity returns at a point where equity investors will be attractive. 100% equity funding for these projects doesn't generally make the above 10% returns that equity investors require. So here it's a little more in depth, and maybe I'll wait till the end. But these are some of the hurdles to debt providers. I used to work at the IDB and did a lot of financing for smaller projects, distributed generation, and attempts to finance energy efficiency off the balance sheet of the clients. And these are some of the things that we ran into then, and I continue to run into now as an equity investor. Here's an example of some of the projects that the CEFF-CCA fund supported. We took a grant that then we broke up into very small amounts that did the upfront analysis for these projects, and we are now close to closing our next fund. The first close we expect to be around 75 million, and we hope that will be double by the end of the year. We still need a few investors to meet our minimum ticket size. But with the CEFF-CCA funds, we identified over $65 million in potential investment. So we're ready to move forward as soon as we can close our next fund. Here we have our fund strategy. The next fund will be similar to our current fund. It will be focused on energy efficiency and smaller scale renewable projects. But we will also have a 15% set aside for Southeast Asia. We have the results from our first fund presented here, which is, you're seeing a 16 to 17% blended IRR from the projects, and a large diversity of projects across numerous countries to hit the 75 million. And you can see both the energy savings produced, and in many cases energy efficiency savings come in heat, and the electricity savings. Thank you very much.
Okay, that was. Thank you very much, Pat. Thank you very much for sharing with us your experience. I'd like to highlight a couple of elements which I think are noteworthy and in line with our objectives. Number one is the very real gap that we know exists for smaller projects, and Patrick, I think, mentioned it and highlighted it quite clearly. In addition to that, the need for creative approaches And Pat also mentioned what it takes. It's not a cookie cutter type of approach, especially in energy efficiency. And the integration of renewable energy into the energy efficiency space is actually one of the stories that takes place, especially in the region, and not just with hotels or resorts, but as we also saw, with institutions like banks and hospitals. So, and this is something that's new as well, that's taking place, and I want to highlight that. So the creative approaches, the integration of renewable energy into energy efficiency, and the difficulty of that market, and finally the role that CEFF-CCA had in that case to assist in providing some funds to number one to increase pipeline and deal flow and identify near-term opportunities, but in addition to that, deal with some of the very real costs that lower scale projects require, some of the very real costs that where scale becomes an obstacle for these types of technology being rolled out. That is part of what MGM used to address, use some of the CEFF-CCA funds to address. So I want to thank Patrick for that. That was a very, very good high level presentation. Very much appreciated. And I think at this point I'd like to turn it over to Ulsa. I believe, is it Alden who will be speaking?
Great. Thank you, George. Good morning to all. We really appreciate the time that you are giving us. La Salle is a Christian faith-based academic global association with presence in León since 1903. The mission of La Salle Nicaragua is to bring self-development opportunities to children and young people through education. La Salle Technological University, ULSA, is young. It was founded in 2008. Sorry, we have troubles with our presentation. We cannot change the slide.
Is it Paul? Can you help them with that?
Okay, I will continue to save time. We are part of La Salle International Association of Universities. ULSA focuses its academics programs in electronics, electric power, mechanics, and sustainable energies. We also develop research about electronics waste disposition, biofuels, biogas, and clean energy generation. In 2016, the university applied to CEFF-CCA. We were the only university that proposed a project oriented to analyze problems of access to electricity in rural areas of the western region of Nicaragua, and in this year in Las Segovias region. Part of the work was to estimate the real demand of access to electricity in underserved or unreached parts of rural zones. Using methodologies of computer-assisted personal interviews, we surveyed family units and small farms in the western and Las Segovias regions. In both parts, 45 municipalities were attended. 50,000 visits were done with 12,000 effective response from home and small farms. The population cover reached the 52,000 people. Both projects, Ancien 1 and 2, provide useful information not only about access to electricity problems, but about renewable generation too. Among the study's findings, we must present that we found that in rural areas of Nicaragua, there is a subsistent local economy, vulnerable to climate variability, mainly expressed in droughts, plagues, soil erosion, and floods. Interviewed people, mainly owners, manifest that they do few efforts to improve environmental practices. Almost all the disconnected people express their desire to access a quality electric power service, upcoming from clean and renewable sources. But clean energy system current prices settle barriers to access from their point of view. Studies also revealed that the electricity used in productive ways is very low. We found an unrest cap or opportunity for the use of small electric machines to improve efficiencies at local level. The main electricity used are only lighting and entertainment. Comparing service in rural sites and main cities, we found that there is an uneven application of electricity prices. Urban consumers pay high rates, while rural consumers pay low rates or do not pay at all. In some rural sites, local authorities promote the irregular connection and electricity stealing as a way of political favor payment. Remember that Nicaraguan electricity is the most expensive in Central America. As a result of the project UNSUR-1, we found that national officers in charge of energy generation commonly shut down aeolic generation plants while turn on fuel plants, saying that renewable generation creates instability in the national electricity network. With this in mind, the university applied to CEFF-CCA and obtained funds to install a state-of-the-art laboratory for renewable energies. This laboratory will address the market and public officer resistance to intermittent power sources, along to educate a new generation of professionals for the energy sector through academic or tailor-made courses. With the laboratories, we aim to provide a stable and technologically neutral platform to evaluate performance of the grid connected to clean energy generation. ULSA plans to extend capacities in order to provide services for the Central American electricity interconnection, like energy storage analysis and modeling situations. Also, with Project UNSUR-1, we found that time for customers' attention when they ask for clean energy system is too long, normally 2 to 3 months length. There is disconnection between clean energy system CES vendors and banks attending this sector. The goal is to have a unique software tool that estimates electricity consumption, calculate dimension, cost, and credit data for solutions at homes, farms, and businesses. ValueSol, the name of the software, will work in a multi-platform stage, PC, web, mobile, depending on the service required. For consumers, ValueSol will help them to track their electricity consumption and billing in a one-time or monthly basis, depending upon they install the software in their PCs or visit our web page. For CAS vendors, ValueSol will help them to evaluate customer needs and conditions on site. With the banks, ValueSol becomes a technical assistant tool ideal to evaluate customers' credit applications. When we have beneficiaries data, ValueSol is useful for NGOs that want to evaluate access to electricity projects regarding provision of CES solutions. Despite the difficult situation of Nicaragua, all the projects in execution are getting the planned results with a high level of performance. After 18 months of work, we can proudly say that we have a clear vision of the access to electricity problems in our country. Our experts now understand the dissonance between governmental policies and the market opportunities that exist out there, and why the clean energy promotion has many obstacles. Now, ULSA has the capacity of having impacts with policies and renewable energy projects, and it is recognized as a center of specialized knowledge and an effective project implementer because it has developed in-house technical capacities. At national level and in some international forums, ULSA is seen now as a key player on renewable energies, electricity efficiency, energy storage, and universal access to energy. Nicaragua's current crisis is shaping up our priorities. As a Christian and academic organization, we are very concerned about real opportunities existing for young people. Many of them will drop their studies due to employment losses, personal insecurity, and political instability. From our point of view, Nicaragua is facing conditions for a severe loss of human capital, and we are trying to find out solutions for that critical problem. Recent laws affect energy efficiency and renewable generation opportunities, creating barriers to individual home and businesses' investment in clean energy systems. We think that we can provide technical studies and key services for people interested in these solutions, but we recognize that we have gaps. This situation is leading to shortage of opportunities, inefficient production, and an increasing economic vulnerability. ULSA proactively addresses and improves those gaps. CEFF-CCA initiative has been the most important experience for the university in the last years. The university executes 4 projects under strict supervision and coordination with ECODIT. Despite the adverse factor that we are living, we prove our muscle and determination to achieve the committed results. With CEFF-CCA support, ULSA is now a recognized authority on access to electricity in Nicaragua. We have developed our own data and analysis capacity, proposing coherent projects and associate business activities to national and international agents, obtaining credible results. ULSA is also engaged in research activities to address electric power sector problems. CEFF-CCA support and trust have transformed ULSA's role in the academic field and now in the business field. ULSA created a business center for natural resources and renewable energies, CENRENER, expressing its commitment to environmental causes. It is now an internal office that connects external needs for services coming up from economic agents with the academic role of the university as human capital developer. CENRENER is also in charge of all social and economic research and projects that ULSA will be engaged. Electricity access is not only about connectivity. Access also contains quality services, fair prices, efficient market, environmental consciousness, proper governmental regulation, and an effective use of technological developments. In order to transform our society behavior regarding the effective use of energy and natural resources, we must sustain that underlying everything are capacity building and education. Under CEFF-CCA auspices, we build capacity and recruit human capital that expand our capacities. ULSA has in the pipeline many project ideas that can address universal access, renewable energy generation, and energy efficiency with greater social and economic impact. ValueSolve, for example, for customers will be a powerful tool for education on electricity consumption matters. It was conceived as a web-based tool that will provide free services and information, useful for self-evaluation as a way to educate any kind of consumer. A positive factor is that we have a young population eager to learn and apply new technologies and practices. ULSA has explored some ways of entrepreneurship, but entrepreneurship needs articulated mechanisms that create favorable conditions for all. We think that ULSA can be an excellent intermediary between funders and entrepreneurs coming up from our graduate students. ULSA plans to expand its capacities to achieve 2 critical goals. 1, become an international knowledge center in renewable energy generation, electricity management, and human capital development. 2, integrate and develop more interconnection between academic research and teaching with business development. With the CENRENER, ULSA will pursue to expand capacities and activities through new projects with strong economic impact. Now we have new tools provided by CEFF-CCA. As geographic information system, data and technologies, smart grid laboratories, computer-assisted personnel interview techniques, and the value solve software that will create new services, projects, and other dynamic within our region and beyond. Thank you for your attention. Any question? Please refer to Norman Reyes and or Alden Girón. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very, very much for that presentation. I wish to highlight that the word value chain. The word value chain is important because, as what has been stated several times, this transition, the integration of renewable energies or energy efficiency is not entirely about the technology. As Patrick highlighted, there are some significant obstacles that need to be addressed at the contractual level, at the due diligence level, at the market identification of projects level. When we then take a step back from the funds level all the way down to what it takes to create conditions of success in a country, we find that the ULSA experience, shared by this quite interesting and determined academic institution with a great deal of tradition, is noteworthy. And it's noteworthy because it's about market mapping. It's about identifying what are the drivers, identifying the impacts and the trends related to climate change. The importance of access, not just to watch television or to have a light bulb, but also to integrate into productive sectors. The need, the gaps that are highlighted by that. And it's important to highlight that once again, the reach and the access. The themes then to be highlighted: productivity, jobs, environmental stewardship, education, human capital. I think that that's what I would highlight, and I would only add that it has been as with the other participants. It has been a pleasure working with ULSA. They have been delivering in the projects, and from the vision and the determination and the focus that you heard transmitted in this presentation, if that same type of attitude focused on problem solving and entrepreneurship and the importance of human capital in education, I think that that's going to be one of the keys to success moving forward for a country which is currently undergoing some internal difficulties, social difficulties. I think I'd like to pivot now to Alonso and his presentation, which you will see will fill a different angle of the market making for this market making webinar. Thank you, Alonso.
Okay, and thank you, Jorge. Hi, my name is Alonso Alegre, and I am project coordinator at the Central American NGO BUNCA. First, on behalf of BUNCA, I would like to thank to the USAID, the CEFF-CCA team, and also ECODIT for bringing us this opportunity and to share with you the experience that we have done during the last year and a half and creating new options of investments during along the region. So today, I will talk about our current project with CEFF-CCA, and this project aims to develop a technical and financial facility for energy access in Central America. So let's start. Slide, please. Yeah, there you go. Okay. Well, in order to start, BUNCA was founded in 1991, and we are based in San Jose, Costa Rica. We have been working in all the regions since then. Also, throughout this time, our work has involved a diversity of partners and projects in mainly the field of energy efficiency and renewable energy. And amongst our main duties, we have carried out an important network with different finance institutions and community-based organizations and other agents and related with the energy topic. In overall, we see ourselves as market intermediaries in the value chain of Central America. Okay, so what about our regional initiatives? And since 2014, basically our current flagship project is FOCAEP, which is a sustainable energy access fund for poverty reduction in our region. Our main partners in this time are the GIC, the German Agency for International Cooperation, and the USAID. And it's important to mention that since 2017, CEFF-CCA became a strategic partner also to boost FOCAEP in our endeavor. And in the next slides, I will show you and describe a little bit more about CEFF-CCA and how it has been so fundamental for BUNCA during this time. Okay, and so to start, how does FOCAEP operate? Well, we are working across the rural areas of Nicaragua, Honduras, and Guatemala, providing financial services and technical assistance for low-power rural electrification through the installation of, first, micro hydroelectric, and second, solar energy systems, with a variety of financial instruments like, first, long-term capital for small hydroelectric power systems and solar energy systems, financial intermediation through credits for financial and non-financial intermediaries, and third, direct credit for tech manufacturers. And as we mentioned before in the previous slide, we work with two main technologies. I will explain first the benefits of micro hydroelectric systems within FOCAEP framework. Micro hydroelectric systems in FOCAEP provide an opportunity to obtain clean and reliable power in small farms. And when we talk about micro hydroelectric systems, we are mentioning basically installations amongst 1 kilowatt and to 100 kilowatt of power installation. And it's also important to mention that these projects increase the productivity and also the income of local farmers or local entrepreneurships in rural regions of the Central America zone. And also, for instance, we have been primarily developing our investments with small coffee producers in the highlands of Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. And this is mainly also due to their positive characteristics, both geographical characteristics and also economic characteristics. Along with this work, and it's important to mention that FOCAEP aims to tailor its loans aligned with payment capacities of the farmers in order to enable the farmer to repay the investments via a loan in a short period and with the secureness of success of the project. Our second main technology is the solar energy systems. Similar to micro hydroelectric, solar energy systems have been promoted in FOCAEP amongst small-scale entrepreneurships in rural areas to increase productivity and income. For instance, these projects help to provide energy in off-grid remote areas or also to diminish electricity consumption in on-grid areas. And so far, we have been analyzing that there are huge potential in different areas of these countries. And since small convenience stores to small hotels, eco-lodge. So we have found that there's this great variety of projects that we can develop in the next slides also characteristics. So it's important also to mention that these both scenarios enable local clients to purchase these systems via loan, plus make an easier transition to environmental friendly system due to its affordability and quick installation. So what are FOCAEP's achievements so far? Well, so far, FOCAEP has experienced through direct credit instruments the installation of 8 micro hydroelectric systems, pilots, most of them, and in the 3 main countries that we're working right now. And what about for solar energy systems? So far, FOCAEP has installed 6 solar energy systems, plus we have set up 3 green credit lines with robust microfinance institutions across the region. Okay, so, well, in these times, since 2014, 4 years do not pass in vain. And FOCAEP, during this time, has learned and understood several dynamics of the market in the region. Today, we can highlight a few lessons learned in this process. First, the Central American region has 7 different countries' realities, each with a variety of opportunities and barriers to develop the energy market. Second, FOCAEP as a financial mechanism is pioneer in the region. Therefore, microfinance institutions have had large challenge to fully undertake energy access as a business opportunity. Third, the region has a lack of technical offer for micro hydroelectric equipment, so pilot projects have been imported from overseas. Fourth, Bunca's regional knowledge is fundamental to develop technical assistance programs for advancing the investment ladder. Okay, throughout this endeavor, CEFF-CCA has played a fundamental role in the strengthening process of our fund, FOCAEP. In this time, we have been enabled to develop a large pipeline and a strong investment portfolio for micro hydroelectric systems in the size of $15 million and in the solar energy systems of $5 million, and to finance energy access basically for productive uses and also address the sustainable development goals of the UN by 2030. And it's important to mention that our portfolio for micro hydroelectric systems in the size of $15 million is divided almost in around 300 sites, and the solar energy system portfolio is divided around 800 sites. Okay, so to finalize, let me share you what we are aiming at. First, we aim to achieve our financial closure to 2020 in the order of $20 million. Second, increase our network of financial intermediaries along the region. And third, continue developing pilot investments in both hydro and solar productive uses in Central America. Thank you very much. We are keen to answer the questions in the Q&A session afterwards.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Alonso. Before we go into the final presentation, which will be another fund, I just want to highlight the ongoing themes here. We already identified that there was a gap in small projects, and we see that Bunca as an NGO is focusing on a smaller segment still. But in the integration of micro hydro with small PV systems and integrating it into productive uses, into commercial uses, even at the small and medium enterprise level, which will be the stage where it's harder to work because it scales, but that's where the greatest prospect for change, especially in attaining the Sustainable Development Goals, can be reached, because the vast majority of our economies in the region tend to fall within the small and medium enterprises. And so it was important to highlight that. Important that they're also integrating the microfinance institutions of the region, who also are protagonists in providing working capital growth funding for small and medium enterprises, usually in really small amounts. And finally, I want to highlight the ongoing theme of technology transfer and of human capital and of creating these concentric circles of commercial growth for better jobs, gender inclusion, and the rest of the Sustainable Development Goals, in addition to the goals that CEFF-CCA and each one of its participants, of the grantees, has included as one of the objectives that they wish to achieve in pursuing the specific initiative. I think I'm going to now turn it over to Fernando Alvarado, who is the CEO of HREM. Thank you, Fernando.
Thank you, Jorge. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everybody, depending on where you are. I am based in San Jose, Costa Rica. I am the CEO of a company named Sustainable Energy Central America, which is the investment advisor to HREM. HREM is the general partner to two clean energy funds that I am going to talk about today, which are CABEF and HREF. HREF is a fund that actually started with the first closing back in late 2016, and CABEF, with the support of USAID and the CEFF-CCA program that I'm going to talk about, actually closed just early this year in January. So the two funds are, beginning its investment period, and we are actually in the process of investing, but also fundraising for a second closing that should be ending by June 2019. So in terms of what we do, as I was talking, we have two funds. These funds are impact investors in clean energy, energy efficiency, and as we will see, also cogeneration projects in the Caribbean Basin. The Caribbean Basin includes Central America, the Caribbean. It also includes Mexico and Colombia and Venezuela, but we don't invest in those three countries. We focus our investment activities in Central America and in the Caribbean. In terms of our mission, we want to make impact investments that contribute to the sustainable development goals and obviously promote energy security and environmental sustainability in the countries where we invest. Our strategy to achieve that is to deploy mezzanine finance, so that's quasi-equity, equity, leasing, and some other energy-as-a-service instruments for sustainable projects and companies with a long-term vision. We are a fund that has a total term of 13 years that could eventually be extended to additional years. So we make investments with a long-term investment horizon in mind. A little bit different than what Patrick was mentioning about MCEF, that they invest mainly in equity. In our case, I would say that we invest preferably through quasi-equity, subordinated debt, etc., or convertible subordinated debt. But we do make, on a very selective basis, equity investments. In terms of why we do this, well, we believe that there's a very big opportunity because electricity is very expensive in Central America and even more expensive in the Caribbean. We find that there are some Caribbean countries that pay twice as much or even 3 times as much as consumers pay for electricity in Central America. So obviously there's an opportunity there to come with viable clean energy investments. We do this in alignment with national policies at a regional level. We have seen that in the last 5-10 years or so, throughout the Caribbean, there is consensus that renewable energy, clean energies, energy efficiency is the way to go, and that has been, reflected in incentives and new policies to promote these technologies. Obviously, as I mentioned before, we are very keen on promoting sustainable development goals. Our, the nature of our investments immediately addresses SDG number 7 of affordable and clean energy for all. But in addition to that, we also see other SDGs such as gender equality, decent work, and economic growth in those portfolio companies. In addition to that, something that has already been mentioned, very important for us, is to close the financing gaps that we see in the region, where there's usually, a lack of financing for particularly the smaller and medium-sized companies and projects. So that's, where our investments can help. Moving forward, just, a quick mention to the impacts that on a portfolio level we are expecting to generate from the two funds combined. So our aim is to facilitate the installation of around 350 megawatts of clean energy in the region that would in turn generate 918 gigawatt hours per year, and then displace or offset 735,000 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent approximately. In terms of socioeconomic impacts, we're trying to come with a portfolio of 30 to 40 investments in renewable energy projects and companies that would in turn benefit more than 500,000 households that would, have clean energy. So I was mentioning that we have two funds, CABEF and HREF. Each of those funds targets to have a total capitalization of $50 million US. We currently have $63 million in capital commitments, so we are still fundraising for that second closing at $37 million, and we are looking for investors that would come with a minimum investment of $1 million and up. Our investors or current investors include a combination of multilateral institutions such as the Inter-American Development Bank, other entities such as the Global Environment Facility, the GEF, climate investment funds, but we also have within our investors impact investors from the US and Canada as well. In terms of investments, our minimum investment would be $1 million, and our maximum investment is 10% of our total capitalization. So when we reach $100 million, we would, our limit would be $10 million maximum per project. Right now, our limit is more or less slightly over $6 million. We do project finance. We do not invest in the early stage development phases of a project, and we offer tailored solutions. That means that we can bundle different smaller projects such that we can reach that minimum number of $1 million. We also look forward to making investments with groups or project developers that would think and want to do more projects than the one that we're initially investing on. And we invest in grid connected and distributed generation projects. And in addition to that, we also can assume initial construction risk to sort of de-risk the projects for other participants or lenders that come to the companies where we invest. In general, these are the eligible technologies, most renewable energy technologies, although not something that we could support with the CEFF-CCA or USAID grant, but we do consider cleaner sources of energy such as LPG or LNG as alternatives to perhaps more polluting energy, particularly in the Caribbean, such as diesel. But in addition to that, obviously, all the other renewable energy technologies. I want to make special reference to the support that USA through the CEFF-CCA program has given us, and obviously in collaboration with ECODIT as their implementing agency. In general, I would say that this grant has been catalytic for a very, how can I say, substantial or impactful start of the CABEF fund in activities that included, for example, the understanding of the regional markets and the regulatory frameworks such that we could make better informed investment decisions. Obviously supporting our pipeline development efforts, so allowing us to identify investment opportunities even before the funds started, then supporting and allowing us to cover or start the investment process for potential deals, again, even prior to the start of the funds. Very important, the development of extended network. Oops, something has happened. I don't see my presentation, Paul. But, okay, there it is. Just wanted to comment on a few projects that we are, presentation is acting strangely. So I just wanted to showcase a few projects in our pipeline or portfolio. One is Kingo Energy, which is a startup from Guatemala that provides prepaid access to solar energy to communities where the grid will never reach in the foreseeable future. Another one is a company that is named Platter Haiti that provides turnkey cogeneration solutions to large industrial consumers in Haiti. We're also looking at an investment in TenPower, which is a US company that has an operation in Haiti to provide finance turnkey solutions for companies and other larger users of electricity. And this is interesting because the innovation is that it comes with the financing by virtue of leasing agreements already included in the technical solution. And this is a snapshot of our more than a pipeline. It's a combination of pipeline and portfolio. The first 5 projects in this list are actual, approved investments for over $10 million, and the rest of the projects are going through our investment process. So a total of almost $60 million of the 63 that we currently have in capital commitments in just the first few years of our investment period speak about the opportunity that we see. Also understanding that, the total cost of these projects is over $467 million. That also suggests that there's also a very interesting co-investment opportunity in a very diversified portfolio and by country and technology. And then lastly, just a recap of our key terms. So we're talking about 2 funds that currently have $63 million under management, but are targeting to reach and close at $100 million, investing in Central America and the Caribbean. We invest both in grid connected and off-grid, but we see the future more promising in off-grid, particularly all this trend and opportunities with the battery storage that will be coming very soon. I already talked about our instruments that can be quasi-equity and equity as well. Long-term focus of the fund with flexible repayment plans. We are targeting returns of 10 to 12% net of management fees, and that's for the investors in the fund. So at portfolio level, we're seeking to make investments that yield perhaps in the mid-teens. And then the usual management fee and carried interest structure that is common to private equity venture capital funds. I am going to stop there. Oh, we have 2 offices. So I am based in San Jose, Costa Rica, but we also have a regional office in Kingston, Jamaica to better service the Caribbean markets. Thank you for your attention. And then once again, thank you for USAID for giving us this opportunity to share what we do.
Thank you very much, Fernando. That was an excellent presentation as well. We started with a fund, we closed the market maker section with a fund, and in the interim, we dove all the way into the specific relationships, the specific issues of one very particular market, which is the Nicaraguan market, and how a university is working to strengthen conditions of success in that market. And we moved up a little bit with the NGO Bunka, who was working in 3 countries, focusing as well on the integration of renewable energy efficiency in production and small farms. But in addition to that, integrating microfinance, and then we close again with a fund, and that is similar in its mission to the MGM fund, and yet it has its own experience and its differences. The themes continue to resonate: the energy access, energy security, a cost-efficient approach, a more efficient approach, a more environmentally sensitive approach, as well as the job creation, technology transfer, knowledge transfer, and focus on the Sustainable Development Goals. I think at this stage we're going to turn it over to questions, and we will see what we have. Paul, I'll just check into the questions section, correct?
That's correct. A few have come in.
Very good.
And for anyone else, you may type your questions in the little chat box at the bottom, should you have any for our panelists.
Okay. Okay. So the first question is for Alden and Ulsa, and it's a very specific question regarding has the current political situation in Nicaragua affected the La Salle and CEFF-CCA program development of the various grants in the country? Alden?
We couldn't hear you clear. So can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. The question is, given the difficulties you highlighted, the complex social unrest happening in Nicaragua right now, what has been the impact of that on the initiatives that the university has been leading forward with these grants?
Okay, the impact is very deep. We have to clear new ways. We have to find out some new specification for some project that we were working first. Right now, we are thinking about to give priorities to projects that will have social and economic impact, always regarding energy access. But we are thinking about how to generate employment and other things that we think that are very important to get recovery for homes and families. Also, regarding this project, we think that we have to review what was the situation last year and at the beginning of this year, and try to find out how we will see our future, or immediate future, in a way that we can find out a clear path for our movement.
Okay, very good. I might add, from the CEFF-CCA perspective, that there has, of course, been an impact to some of these initiatives underway in Nicaragua. It's hard to imagine that it wouldn't have, and yet we have seen, both from what you just heard from Alden, that what it has also generated is this energy, this vision of the importance of the type of market making, so to speak, that is required, especially as a university looks forward to its mission to contribute to recovery, as it were, whether it's economic recovery or job creation, technology transfer, and knowledge transfer, in order to strengthen the conditions for improvements going forward. That's what I can add from the CEFF-CCA perspective. That's what we have seen from ULSA. I'll go on to the next question.
Jorge, do you want, just from the investor's perspective, I would say we have some projects under development in Nicaragua, but I would find it very hard to get approval from my investors currently. I don't know if Fernando would also face that. It would be very hard for me to make equity investments on the ground in Nicaragua at the moment.
Right, I understand that. Fernando, I assume it would be the same situation for you. I don't hear Fernando, but
sorry,
as a fund.
I am here. I was commenting that we actually are looking currently at an investment opportunity in a small-scale hydroelectric plant in Nicaragua that is going to be refurbished with our financing. And given what has been happening, we are sort of, taking purposely a little bit longer on our due diligence to see what's going to be the outcome. So I would say that not that we are desisting from the investment, we're just perhaps, taking a little bit longer to see.
Alonso, I wonder if you have, since you're also active in Nicaragua and you focus on a slightly different segment, I wonder if you have a comment about that too.
Yes, well, as you know, we are working in Nicaragua broadly in all the rural communities, and honestly, we need to suspend some activities because we are basically focusing on our projects in very rural communities, very remote areas. So as you might know, that transportation issues and any other communication is very difficult in the country right now. So in that sense, we directly need to stop some activities. We were planning to do 3 investments in the first semester of this year, but we also, of course, we need to suspend it and be like hold on until the situation improves or get better.
Thank you very much to all the participants. Alden, as you hear from these other participants, it's evident that the vision that you have going forward and the importance of the work that you guys are doing is going to be probably quite significant as things settle down and the country begins to look forward to economic growth again in this space and in general. If I'm going to move on to another question. This is a question for you, Patrick. For MGM, if you are doing 100% equity, why are you concerned about the availability of debt financing?
Well, we're going in with 100% equity only because banks will not enter directly into project financing for small projects. So the models all assume that we're going to get some of that equity takeout and reinvest in a different project, but we need to go in with 100% equity, both because of the size of the projects and also because banks won't take construction risk.
And Patrick, has that been a condition that you have faced throughout every single country in the region that you are working in? Or that's one question. And the second question is, have you seen any movement? Because we often hear about green credit lines and financing available for green types of projects. The evidence seems to be that it's less available than it would be. But I wonder what you are seeing as a direct investor in some of these projects and in many of these countries.
Yeah, I would say it's a broad assumption, but it's backed by experience in many countries in Latin America, Brazil, Chile included. Yes, banks will lend on the balance sheet of a corporate client that's willing to provide guarantees, or if I am willing to provide 150% collateral in an account, just having the money sitting there backing up the project, but that's not economical. So what we're talking about is trying to do project finance where the only recourse to the debt provider is the equipment and the cash flows. And in that scenario, it is challenging to do small projects because there's a lot of due diligence that banks require. And in addition, if you're going to take construction risk, then banks typically want to have an independent engineer reviewing all of the documentation ahead of time, and it just becomes legally very complex. So to do projects with less than $5 million total cost, maybe if you're getting to $15 million total cost where you don't have a large corporate that is willing to guarantee the construction and provide all the other guarantees necessary, it's very, very challenging.
Okay, thank you.
But there are credit lines for corporates. Yeah, there are corporate credit lines for corporations that are willing to borrow. Generally, the terms are not long enough so that the project pays for itself out of your savings. Generally, it's a 6-year credit line or less, and these projects typically require longer than that. But that requires the corporate to decide, this is where I'm going to use my capital and my limited debt capacity. I'm going to place it in energy efficiency renewables, which often is not their highest priority.
Right. Well, in this market, we're not always dealing with corporates, and the scale tends to be smaller, as you highlighted. So I don't know, Fernando, if you have something that you would like to add on that topic.
Yeah, I share Patrick's views. What we are trying to do, especially with smaller projects, is take a proactive approach. If they make sense, we would go ahead with our own money and invest equity and get the first few projects built. Once built, then obviously there's no construction risk. We believe then that the banks would be more eager to lend to those performing assets already, usually with contracted revenues as well. And so our approach is, we go ahead, deploy equity, get a few projects built, we bundle them together, take them to lenders, then leverage debt on that, which allows them to, with that liquidity, go and do another round of bundled projects and so on. So in the end, we end up with a similar structure of, let's say, 30% to 70% equity, as if the project had been, attractive to the lender from the beginning. But we just recognize that perhaps smaller projects are more difficult to finance for lenders, and we have come with this approach.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to move on to the next question. I want to make sure that everybody's aware that in about 8 minutes we're going to have to close the webinar because it will close on us. So I want to make sure that we get to the other questions. So this next question is regarding CEFF-CCA, the CEFF-CCA fund. If the grant window closes in October 2018, is there still time to submit projects for review? The answer is no. I will go ahead and provide that answer quickly. If so, what's the cutoff date? Well, no cutoff date, because the answer is no. How long does it take to review a project or a grant? Well, it has varied, but we have been able to do it fairly quickly, and usually the turnaround has not been more than, I would say, I don't know, 3 to 6 weeks. However, the grant facility is closing, and so there is no opportunity to present any more projects. I'm going to go to the next question. This is to Alonso. Alonso, at a grassroots level, at the level that you're working, you might probably need skills and expertise on community mobilization, communication, and participation. If that is the case, how does this affect your financial planning? How do you integrate that, Alonso? That's a good question.
Okay, Jorge, hi. Well, regarding our project, our fund specifically for CAEP, we have trying to target our audience mostly in the productive use. And the productive use, what I mean with that is basically small farmers, small entrepreneurships. We talk about small coffee producers in remote areas, and small convenience stores, small eco-lodge in rural areas. So that's our target. So we have not been mainly working with communities in this part of the project, because we think also that for this kind of investments, it's more suitable to work with partners that are mostly able to do a payment of the project in a short period.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Working with productive uses and also commercially driven technologies in the region. Yeah.
Okay, so because of the segment that you target, which are small businesses, small farms, small commercial ventures, you are in fact not working with communities at this stage, and so you have not faced difficult community situations where you feel that you need to integrate and explain the project at a local level as much?
No, at this stage of the project, we haven't focused on these kind of communities where we need to basically gather and have meetings with the local leaders and this kind of activities. No, the answer is no. We have not been working with this kind of audience so far, and we are mainly focused on productive and commercially driving clients in the regional market of Central America. So no, we have not faced like this social challenges that we need to work with communities and talk to them, explain the topic, all these different activities.
Right. And so, well, let me flip the question a little bit and ask Alden, because Alden works and also has been working with communities and doing their surveys and the like. Alden, have you found it as part of your findings of your work that rural communities are interested in these types of projects, are interested in integrating renewable energy into their lives, and that in general are supportive of these types of engagements where you have done these studies?
Okay, okay. We survey homes mainly. The approach with communities is a little bit different because, okay, you have to make workshops with communities and try to solve the problems, try to know what are the conditions that they have, and it's a little bit longer than the approach that we use with homes. So many people is interested in getting energy with renewable energies, but right now the government has in Nicaragua a very expansive efforts to create new conditions to connect communities. Right now, we don't know what will be the end of this project. Is with the Inter-American Bank, I think, is the funder of this project with the government. So in some communities, there are many opportunities for local clean energy systems. But right now, we have to face with the law that was enacted the last year that is not really clear about how will be how you will solve the problem of studies and other things that the law is requiring from people that want to establish an enterprise, a community enterprise, or a self-generation system for homes. We are not sure about the law is unclear right now.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I don't want the system to interrupt you. I think that there's a great deal more to speak of. We didn't really get into the integration of microfinance and the idea of microgrids and microutilities, and yet these are initiatives that, as we heard, are underway at different levels and layers in the Caribbean and in Central America. I want to thank everybody for participating. I want to congratulate all of our grantees. It has been a singular pleasure working with all of you. And I want to thank all the participants and the audience. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you very much for listening. And this webinar will be taped, so it will be accessible in a variety of from a variety of sources. Thank you very much, and I wish you an excellent rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.